Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I will be wrapping up the last 6 books I've read. Some of these were from the tail end of shorty September and the rest of them I read in October. I'm going to start with 2 Dutch books. They are both relatively new releases, so they haven't been translated yet. So I'll briefly talk about them here and I'll put timestamps in the video to where I will talk about English books, so you can skip ahead if you want to. The first book I want to talk about today is Gebied 19, which you could translate as Area 19 by Esther Gerritsen. I read this with a new in real life book club that I joined. We discussed this a couple of days ago. So this book starts when a middle-aged man called Thomas wakes up on the day after his wedding to his second wife. He wakes up, he finds that his wife is gone. He's not too worried, he just thinks she probably went out to the shop or something. So he goes out to walk the dog. And he quickly starts noticing some strange things. There's not that many people about, and he lives in Amsterdam, so he expects it to be quite busy. There's no buses or trams, none of the shops are open. So he asks a passerby, like, what's going on? Why is it so quiet? And the answer he gets is like, well, don't you know, it's the relocation. And he learns that there is another planet where they will basically create an Earth 2.0. This planet is just slightly bigger than Earth, and only people who were either under 40 years old or who were deemed essential or important were moved to this new planet. And apparently everyone knew this was going to happen except Thomas. And he is like, yeah, I know I can get caught up in work a bit too much and shut myself off from my surroundings. He's a writer, a thriller writer. But he finds this a bit extreme. So that is like the basic setup of this book, and we follow Thomas when he tries to figure out what happened. He tries to get in contact with his family and just is sort of figuring out what he is supposed to do. And yeah, I enjoyed this. First of all, it reads very easily. Esther Gerritsen is also a writer for the stage, so she's very good at dialogue. It feels very natural and it flows really well. It was also a fun book for a book club. It's obviously a sci-fi or speculative book, and I think that genre in itself is great to explore current topics in a fictional, hypothetical setting. There's climate change in here, conspiracy theory, immigration. There is some obviously there are some obvious parallels to the pandemic. So I think it's a great book to discuss and especially think about the what if question. What if this is something that would actually happen? I think where the book lacked for me was character development. Unfortunately, the protagonist was at best uninteresting and at worst exasperating, which is probably kind of the point of the book, but it did mean that I didn't really enjoy spending my time with him and I didn't really care about him. There were some characters with potentially a lot more interesting stories to tell, but they were kept kind of flat. And the other thing that I didn't really like, that for me it tried too much in the end. Like I said, it had a lot to discuss for a book club, but the plot but the plot just got a little bit too convoluted with just too many things that were fit in. So yeah, for me it was definitely the sort of book that could be great, but it just didn't quite get there for me. You know, an enjoyable read nonetheless. The next book I read was Een modern verlangen by Hanna Bervoets, or A Modern Longing. This is a short story collection. She is the author of We Had to Remove This Post, and I haven't read this book, but from what I've heard, this book might be similar in themes and in tone. I really enjoyed this book. This is my first time reading Hanna Bervoets, and it definitely won't be the last. She goes through different genres in this book. She starts with a few stories very much based in reality, almost hyper-focused on very small aspects of humanity that everyone will recognize. For example, one of the first few stories is about people interacting on an online forum about guinea pigs, and she captures that specific way that people interact on internet forums so precisely. It's so perfectly observed. And then throughout the collection, the stories gradually start to get a little bit weirder, a little bit more speculative, until they are straight up science fiction. In the last sort of connected trilogy of stories, people are trying to get themselves on a space pod to leave for another planet, which was actually very reminiscent of Gebied 19. And I love that build-up of the book from like realistic to science fiction, because you're not quite sure when it switches from one to the other. It's like a blurred, messy line, and she captures humanity and the interaction between people and the complicated messiness of humanity right on that intersection. Yeah, I thought this was really, really well done. So those were the two Dutch books I wanted to discuss today. And now I have 4 English books left I want to talk about. First we have Corregidora by Gayl Jones. This is one of the Virago modern classics with the green spines, and I love the illustration on this cover. I think it's very striking. So this is the story about Ursa. She is a blues singer at a nightclub, and the book starts when she has just been beaten very badly by her husband, so violently that she miscarries, and she also finds out a little while later that this beating has left her sterile. So this is a difficult book right off the bat, and the story continues in the aftermath of that, and interspersed with that are stories that Ursa remembers her grandmother telling her when she was a young girl. Stories about her ancestors who were children of slaves who were raped by this one Portuguese slaveholder called Corregidora. And her grandmother kept talking to her about the importance of making generations to bear witness to that trauma, so that they are not silenced and they can keep telling their stories. So obviously there's this very interesting contradiction between the stories her grandmother told, and throughout her life she has always heard that making generations is the most important thing, and then now being made sterile. There's a lot of dark themes explored in this book. Obviously it's about intergenerational trauma and how what happened generations back is still affecting Ursa, and especially her relationships with men. It's about violence, sexual violence, about memories and how to preserve memories. It's about motherhood and womanhood. And I'm not quite sure how to talk about my feelings of this book. To be honest, I felt a bit lost and a bit disconnected. Now this could be because it's just a difficult and complicated book. You know, considering what this book is about. And maybe it warrants a reread or a more careful reading than I did. But it is also very well possible that as a white woman, maybe this book just wasn't written for me. And therefore it's not strange that I felt disconnected to it or a bit distant. To me the book feels very overwhelming and I felt kind of untethered in it, which is kind of the same way I felt about a book like Beloved by Toni Morrison. So yeah, that was Corregidora by Gayl Jones. So the next book I read was In the Kitchen, Essays on Food and Life. And I really enjoyed these essays. I don't really have that much to say about them. These are all essays about food, about cooking, eating, what role those things had in the lives of the essayist, what the meaning of food was, the rituals surrounding food, observing human interaction through meals. Like there wasn't really anything groundbreaking in this collection. I didn't get any new insights, but I do think that they were all very well done. I think food writing always has this comforting quality to it, and that's what I got from this. I just enjoy it for what it was. I also read Summerwater by Sarah Moss, and this just cemented her as one of my favorite authors. She is just so good. So this book is set at a kind of faded glory holiday chalet park in Scotland. It's midsummer and it's this very grey, rainy day. The whole book is set over the course of one day, and in each chapter we follow a different person. And throughout the book there is this increasing tension that maybe we are building up to something, but also maybe not. And every chapter is about this one person and whatever issues they are dealing with within themselves or within their family. But they are also all watching each other, keeping an eye on what the neighbors are doing, speculating about each other. And because it's this rainy day and everyone is kind of stuck in their own little bubble, no one actually interacts with each other in a direct way. It feels a bit claustrophobic, and it also seems like this small holiday cabin park is like a condensed version of British society as a whole. And what I think Sarah Moss is just so brilliant at is her ability to portray actual people, their inner workings, the dynamics between partners, the dynamic within a family. There's a chapter where a mother of 2 small children finally gets an hour to herself, and she just gets frozen in thinking about what she should do in this hour to like use it in an optimal way. There's a chapter wherein a young woman is having sex with her boyfriend, but you're in her mind that is constantly distracted by 1,000,001 other thoughts. There's a chapter of a teenage girl who is mad at her parents for taking her to a place that is so boring. There's a chapter on a few kids playing outside and this slight cruelness that children will have towards each other when unsupervised. By the way, I think there's 2 chapters seen from the perspective of children, and that slight undertone of cruelty and creepiness in those chapters is just phenomenal. Yeah, I think Sarah Moss just writes and observes so delicately and precisely, and pinpoints the moral dilemmas in just a few words. Yeah, I love this. It was brilliant. And then the last book I want to talk about today, which was also brilliant, is Matrix by Lauren Groff. All I really know about this book going in was that it was a book about lesbian nuns, and that some people whose taste in book I trust had read and loved it. And yes, this story is about lesbian nuns, but there's obviously a bit more to it. So this book starts when our protagonist, 17-year-old Marie, is riding to France to become the prioress at an abbey. This book is set in the 12th century, I should probably say that. And Marie is the bastard daughter of some English nobleman. She lives with her mother on an estate in France, and when her mother dies, she first takes care of herself for a few years, lives off the land and the bit of money she had. But when the money runs out, she's still a teenager at this point, she goes to seek help from her father's family, who are British royalty. So the Queen of England takes her in for a few years, but ultimately the Queen sends her away to this abbey. And you soon find out that the Queen does this because she doesn't think Marie is suitable for court life, she's not suitable for marriage, she's too tall, too large, too ugly. So she sends her away, and that's kind of where the story starts. As you can imagine, Marie is not too happy about this. Firstly, she had gotten used to a life at court with all the comforts that brings, and now she has to live in an abbey that has no money, so the nuns are all starving, and her whole day revolves around prayer and servitude. And secondly, probably more importantly, Marie was in love with the Queen. She had this huge crush, she was just obsessed with her, and she just does not understand why she's being sent away, because in her mind this love was at least a little bit mutual. So she's also heartbroken, and she desperately writes to the Queen to take her back, and she is just wallowing in pity. Until one day she realizes the Queen is not going to come for her. This abbey with these nuns is where she's going to be. And then she decides she's going to be the baddest girl boss prioress in all the land. She's going to take this abbey, turn it into a fortress filled with fierce nuns who no one dares oppose. And that is exactly what she does, and what this whole story is about. And I love this. I love this. It's feminist. It's about the strength of women coming together. It's witchy. It's fanatical. It's sensual. It's grand, but also intimate. The writing is rich, but not heavy-handed. It reads quite easily. It almost has a biblical quality to it. Like it has a weight to it and a kind of formality, but like I said, still easily accessible. I think the writing fits the story perfectly. Just a spectacular book. This will definitely show up in my end of the year favorites, as well Summerwater. Just great. I love books and I love what they can do. So that's it. That's another 6 books wrapped up. Let me get a little stack ready. There we go. Those were the last 6 books I read. Yeah, I love hearing from you. I love talking to you. So leave a comment on anything you want to say. It could be about these books, could be about anything you want to talk about. Tell me your last 5-star reads. Tell me, is it also getting autumnal while you are? Okay, I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.